Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman, and in celebration of John Marcus's new channel, I decided to do a critical critique of John Marcus's sermon of the Good Samaritan. In this video, John Marcus fills this Jewish story up with a bunch of Pauline theology, evangelical Christian ideas. And it's a lot to handle. And sometimes I cannot see how John Marcus can read such things into this piece of New Testament literature. So let's investigate. So John Marcus first says that the story starts out when the 70 return. But that's not true. The Samaritans were mentioned not only in Luke 10, but Luke 9. The Samaritans were a community that rejected Jesus. Jesus sent out some people, and the community rejected him, and they said, Jesus, shall we call down fire from heaven as Elias and destroy him? And Jesus said, no. And he rebuked them, because he said the Son of Man came to save lives, not to destroy them. And in 10, he chooses to use the Samaritan in the parable of who our neighbors are, to show the act that even though the Samaritans rejected Jesus, they were still able to show mercy and compassion. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Also, John Marcus assumes that the 70 disciples were Jewish. There's no indication that, Gentile, sorry. There's no indication that these disciples, the 70, were Gentiles. And John Marcus likes to think that Jesus is preaching the lawyer a Christian, Pauline message on grace and salvation and the new covenant. Jesus is not. In both instances, you can look it up for yourselves, friends. In Matthew 19, when a man runs up to Jesus and says, Good Master, and asks him point blank, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus gives him the same answer as he does here in Luke 10, which is a strictly Jewish answer. So let's read what that strictly Jewish answer is and find out how we may, if you're Jewish, inherit eternal life. According to what Jesus says, and if you have the words in red Bible, you will be able to see that Jesus himself said these things. So, let me Luke 10:25. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? And he said unto him, What is written in the law? How readest thou? And he answering said, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And he said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. Same thing he said in Matthew 19 to the man. But all people who are inquisitive like to push things further, just like the man in Matthew 19 says, But Master, what else do I lack? Here the man says, but willing to justify himself, said unto Jesus, Who is thy neighbor? Now here, Jesus has a perfect opportunity to use this as a teaching tool to his disciples who rebuked the Samaritans in the previous chapter. And Jesus specifically chooses to use the Samaritan in this chapter as the one who shows compassion and mercy. And he gives a bunch of people, seemingly righteous people, pass by, and at the end, a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, saw him, and had compassion on him. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow he went and departed. He took out 2 pence and gave to the host, and said unto him, Take care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again I will repay thee. Which of these three thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among the thieves? And he said, He that showed mercy. So, here you had a community that previously did not accept Jesus. They were still able to show compassion and mercy. That's what Jesus was underlining to his disciples in this. Jesus did not tell the man who asked about eternal life. He did not quote Romans 10:9 and 10. He quoted a Jewish law code. And here he underscores unity, not division. And a lot of times when we get into theology, friends, we tend to put circles around things, and we don't go outside of those circles. And we think that we can't go outside of those circles because of what Orthodox will think. So, Jesus here shows his disciples that compassion and mercy exist outside of those circles. And each person, both you and me, have the ability to show those kinds of traits. So, be well, friends, and don't get hung up on the theology. And don't get hung up on being a Johnnian Christian, a Paulian Christian. Get hung up on the unity of Christ and what he represents. Where a lot of people concentrate on duality, the fight against good and evil. Unity is how you get back, both with yourself and the divine, by crossing over and finding out who your neighbor is and showing compassion. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking